Hello friends, welcome to the session. In this session, we'll be discussing about some introduction to the data structure. In this session, we will see some elementary concept and elementary terms that are associated with the data structure. In this session, we will see why it is important to study data structure whenever you go for the study of computer science. So friends, this is the session that I have been recording for PSS Central Institute of Vocational Education. And I have recorded this session for the course of Junior Software Development. Also, you will find that whenever you learn computer science, then the subject of data structure is very essential, and therefore those who want to learn computer science, all of those students can make the use of this session for developing their skills in the concept of data structure. So let us start the session with the question, what we mean by data structure. Friends, you must have been seeing your Aadhaar card. We know that whenever we live in India, then everybody need to hold one card, and this card is being called as an identity card named as an Aadhaar card. So what this card consists of? One can easily find that this card consists of a logo from the government of India. It consists of a photo. It consists of your name. It consists of your date of birth. It consists of your gender. And you will find that every Aadhaar card has a unique number. So this is a number, and that is a unique number that is being associated with the Aadhaar card. So what you observe from the data or the different items that are being displayed on the Aadhaar card, you will find that in the real life, we will always deal with some set of values. The set of values such as name is a value. If you go for purchasing some item, then the item name or the cost of the item is itself is a value. Then when you enroll yourself in a college or in a class, then you will have been given a certain roll number. When you hold some Aadhaar, then every Aadhaar has a unique number. When you live in a city, you will have a certain address, and in the city there is some pin code associated with every city. Whenever you appear in some examination, then you will get certain marks. So that marks is also some kind of value. So in the real life, one can find that there are different values that are associated with each and every person. Now what these values represent? These values represent the facts. So facts means the data. The word data is taken from the word datum, and datum represents the facts. And therefore, whatever the values that are associated with us, these values are just nothing but the facts, and these are called as the data. So data will refer to a set of value or a single value. A data item will refer to a single value or a set of value. So as you know that there is some Aadhaar number associated with you, then this is just nothing but a data. So every person is being associated with a large amount of data. And in computers also, whenever we start programming something, then we need to play with the data values. And therefore, it is very essential for us to understand what this data is and how this data can be stored so that we can make an efficient access to the data. And this is just nothing but the data structure. So let us understand what we mean by the data structure. So before we actually go for detailed understanding of the data structure, there are certain elementary terms that we need to understand about the data structure. Now, whenever you have some data, and whenever you need to organize the data, and whenever you want to organize the data, then accordingly you need to find some appropriate structure for organization of the data. And this structure that is being used for organization of the data is being called as a data structure. So data items that can be further divided into the different sub-items, such items are being called as the group items. So for example, whenever you have a name associated, then you know that your name can be further classified or can be further divided into first name, middle name and last name. So such entity of the data is being called as a group item. So the data that can be further divided is the group item, and the data which cannot be further divided is being called as an elementary item. So collection of the data is there. We need to organize the data, and we should organize it so that we can make an efficient access to the data. This is what we call as the data structure. And in data structure, we deal with the different data elements, such as some of them are group elements and some of them are elementary elements. So data structure is a way by which we can organize the data in computers. So whenever you want to become a good programmer, then the good programming itself will start with the proper selection of the data structure. Because whenever you write a program for any real life problem, then always you need to collect a large amount of data. And whenever you are collecting a large amount of data, you need to organize the data in proper fashion. And for organization of the data itself is crucial, because it's a sign of good programmer. So data elements should be organized so that we can make an efficient access to the data. Now there are certain basic terms that are associated with the data elements or data structure. As I told you, there are certain data elements which cannot be further divided, and therefore we call these data elements as the elementary data elements. Say for example, whenever you take admission in a class or in a college, then you have been given some identity number, or we have been given some roll number. Now you will find that the roll number that is being assigned to you cannot be changed or cannot be further divided into different items, and therefore such entity is being called as a elementary data item. So elementary data item is that data item for which the further division is not possible. So there are certain elements which can be further divided, and these elements we call them as the group items. So whenever we collect some amount of data, then sometimes the data element will consist of elementary items, sometimes the data will consist of group items. Also you will find that every data element that you collect will be associated with some value. Say for example, if you have age as a data element, then in the age of the data element there is some value that is being associated with the age. Say for example, we can have a value 23 that is associated with the age. So 23 is a numeric value. It is possible that you may have some non-numeric value associated with the data element, and this data element value is being called as a property of the data element, or sometimes we call it as an attribute of the data element. So every data element either can be further classified into group item or elementary item, and every data element that you collect will have certain value associated, and that is being called as an attribute or property of the data element. There are certain terms that are associated with the entity called as an entity set. So entities are those data elements that have similar attributes. Say for example, if there is one student in a college, then you will find that there are number of students in a college. So there is a group of number of students in a college. So number of students in a college will have the similar values or similar attributes, and therefore they are treated similarly, and such a set of the data element is being called as an entity set. So entity set is a set of data elements that have similar attributes or similar values. Every attribute of the entity set can have a range of values. Say for example, whenever we consider the mark score by the students, then the range of the values can be from 0 to 100 if the examination is out of 100. So this is the range of the values. If there is some age associated or age attribute, then for the age we can have an attribute value in the range of 0 to 100. So every data element or entity set that you consider in, you will find that it has a specific range of value, and this range of value is being called as an entity set. So whenever we have a data element and whenever there is some value associated or attribute associated, then from that we can infer some information. So data with the given attribute is being called as an information. So information is being always collected from the facts or from the data elements, and the data elements along with their attributes is being called as an information. So you can say that whenever we process the data, then what we extract from the data is the information. Say for example, if I have been given a mark score by the students in a class, suppose there are 50 students in a class and I have got the mark sheet of all the students. Now, if I process this data, then I can infer the information whether the students have passed the course or they have not passed the course. So whether they are pass or fail, that information can be easily extracted from such data values. So whenever we have some data, then you will find that the data need to be organized. There is some basic organization of the data possible, and such basic organization of the data is being called as an elementary data organization. So as you refer to the slide, you will find that we have a figure here where we have shown a file. Then we have a different collection of records. In the records, we have different fields, and you will find that every field is being associated with some data values. So data can be organized in a hierarchy of fields, records, and files. Fields, what they will represent? They will represent the attribute of the entity, that is the value of the entity. For example, we can have a roll number, we can have a name of the student or mark score by the different students as the fields of the records. And you will find that every record will hold a certain value which can be represented by the data element. For example, we can have a roll number such as 1211. We can have the name of the student as Prashant. We can have the mark scored by the student Prashant as 55. So this will constitute one record. So one record will tell you all the information related with one particular student. When there are number of students in a class, then there will be number of records. And when we group all such records together, then that will form a file. So you will find that file is at the top. When we look at the hierarchy of the data elements, file is at the top. Then we have the number of records. Then we have the number of fields. And then we have the different data values associated with each and every field. So you will find that whenever we organize the data in such a fashion, then there are certain concepts that are associated with such data elements. One of this concept is very useful whenever we go further in the study of the data structure, and this concept is called as the primary key. You will find that a record will contain many fields, but there will be at least one field in every record which can be called as a primary key. Now normally, which field is to be called as a primary key? The field that will have a unique value, the value that will be not repeated. Such a field is being called as a primary key. For example, you can say that if we have a college and there are number of students enrolled in a college, then every student is being associated with some identity number or roll number. So this roll number of the student can be the primary key. Also, you must have been observed that whenever you check with the Aadhaar card of each and every person, you will find that the Aadhaar number is never repeated. So every individual person living in India will have a unique number, and therefore such number can be called as a primary key. So primary key is that key which will have a unique value and it will not be repeated for the other records. So file can have a fixed length of records, but it is not necessary that every time the file will have a fixed length of records. We can have a variable length of records as well. So the size of the records need to be specified. So whenever we are creating a file, we need to specify how many records will be there. We need to specify how many fields are there for every record. We need to specify what can be the values of the every record, and also we need to specify the length of the record. So the length of the record can either be fixed or it is possible that you can vary it also. For example, we can use say 4 or 5 digits for the roll number. We can use 20 characters for the name. We can use the 2 digits for the marks or sometimes 3 digits for the marks. So in this way, we can go on creating the hierarchy of the data. And this hierarchy of the data is very essential whenever you write any program for dealing with the data. But you will find that the structure that we have discussed in this first session is very elementary structure of organization of the data. Means files, records, then fields. All this is the structure that commonly we need to make use of whenever we write any program for dealing with the values. But this is not sufficient. You will find that you need many more complex structures, because in real life we have a data where the data itself is very complex, and therefore organizing the data every time in the form of files, records and fields only is not sufficient in order to make an efficient access to it. And therefore we require some more complex data structures. We require the data structures such as arrays, we require the data structures such as records, fields, trees. So many structures are there which we need to make use of. So these data structures we will discuss in our later sessions, and friends, you will find that this was the first introductory session, and in the later sections we will deal with more complex data structures. So friends, thank you for viewing the session. Thank you all.